This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 20 minutes and holding. We have approximately 5 minutes remaining in this 10-minute built-in hold.
You're loud and clear. How many?
The shuttle weather officer has completed giving his weather assessment to Launch Director Bob Seek. And at this time, the ceiling is at the margin of 8,000 feet. So the plan at this point is to proceed down to T-minus 9 minutes and evaluate the situation. And we will hold at T-minus 9 if we do not have ceilings better than 8,000 broken. The primary transatlantic site, Ben Guerir, is go for launch at this time. At T-minus 20 minutes and holding, this is shuttle launch control.
All personnel, the NTD on 212, conducting a T-minus 20-minute briefing. The launch window opens at 14:18 GMT, closes at 18:25 GMT. A second launch attempt is possible if a recycle occurs. There's one COLA this morning, starts at 17:37:30 GMT, ends at 17:39:30 GMT. Wow. If the launch cannot be accomplished within the launch window or if the following times are exceeded, the NTD will call cutoff. Our APU runtime hold time constraint is 7 minutes, launch drain back estimate is 6.8 minutes. If the hold is issued and request an issue between T-minus 9 minutes and T-minus 31 seconds, the countdown clock will be restarted upon successful resolution of the problem without a go survey made of all elements. TLT at T-minus 5 minutes, perform APU start upon command of OTC only.
TLT, Roger.
CDR, the pad egress system is nominal. Evacuation heel pass number 8.
CDR, copy.
The fine room launch team disable telephone ringers at this time. Ingress and egress of the fine room will not be allowed after resuming the count at T-minus 20 minutes until after launch or a flight crew egress if a recycle occurs. All personnel, non-actives, and terminal count monitors channel 217. All personnel bear in mind the critical post-launch operations will be in progress, so keep fire room noise and activities to a minimum. After T-minus 20 minutes, all problems or trends that require a countdown clock hold will be reported to the NTD on channel 212 together with your recommendation. After T-minus 5 minutes, any hold, manual or GLS, should be accompanied by a description of the problem and a recommendation. The count clock will continue until T-minus 31 seconds unless the recommendation is to hold the next milestone. SB, any comments for the crew?
Yes, CDR, SB, how do you read?
CDR, loud and clear.
Okay, I got a couple items. Water spray boiler number 2 steam vent temp is below 130, so your APU2 ready to start talkback will be barber pole. And they tell me that your in-flight maintenance kit is in compartment 7 and 8. Should be in 9 and 10. And that's all I have. Have a good flight.
And for the rest of the
Okay, we copy that. Thank you.
For the rest of the team, we will not be locking the fine room up until we pick up the clock at T-minus 9 minutes. We'll be extending the hold at T-minus 9 minutes. Are there any questions? That concludes the briefing.
And as OTC on net 212, all personnel after transition to Ops 101, discontinue all LGB PMU reads for remainder of countdown.
OTC, CGNC.
Red CGNC.
Yeah, your pre-flight line is complete, ready for transition to Ops 1. And we have 10 minutes from 13:44/58.
Copy that. CNQC, copy.
I copy. And we're complete to step 895.
Copy that.
Flight NTD, verify ready to resume the count at 20 minutes. Copy.
And GPS, OTC. GPS, go ahead. Copy, step 888, Geo. And we copy.
Sentinel personnel, countdown clock will resume at 8:48 Eastern Time.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 20 minutes and holding. We're now 30 seconds away from coming out of this planned 10-minute built-in hold at T-minus 20. Inertial measurement unit pre-flight alignment is now complete, ready for the transition to Ops 101.
Yes, sir. I can give you step 955 at this time.
Coming out of the hold now in about 7 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. T-minus 20 minutes and counting. Purge of the 3 fuel cells is now underway, and the data processing system engineer has confirmed the onboard computers are in the process of making that transition to the terminal countdown configuration. Stand by for confirmation of that event. The landing and recovery director has reported that the shuttle landing facility is ready and configured for the launch in case of an RTLS, and that the solid rocket booster ships are on station.
DPS. Red DPS. Fast ops transition is complete. DPS ready for BFS transition to Ops 101. Copy that. CDR, OTC.
CDR, go.
Take BFS to Ops 1 for your checklist.
CDR in work.
ELT, OTC.
Go ahead for PLT.
Yes, configure pass and BFS horizontal sit displays for your checklist.
Roger.
Waiting confirmation that we're in Ops 101, the primary launch program.
NTD, CVFS. NTD. Yes, sir. I can verify BFS is tracking pass and ready for BFS upload. Copy. Flight NTD. Form BFS pre-flight uplink loading.
Wilco.
CLS NTD 212.
CLS on 2 and 2.
Let's configure our window remaining clock to count down to reach 0 at 11:45 local time.
11:45 local, copy.
Thank you.
Standing by now for a dump of that Ops 101 program to examine for any miscompares. This takes about 7 minutes to complete.
MTD Houston Flight 212.
NTD.
BFS pre-flight uplink load is complete.
Copy that. CVFS, you copy?
Yes, sir. And PLT, OTC.
Go ahead.
When your horizontal sit's complete, you can also configure OMS interconnect for your checklist.
Roger.
And we're now standing at T-minus 16 minutes and counting. Next hold is at T-minus 9 minutes for 10 minutes. And at that point, we will make a final assessment of the weather to determine whether or not we have ceilings acceptable to pick up, or whether or not we should stand by and wait for improving conditions.
PLT, OTC.
At this time, all of the criteria are go, with the exception of ceilings below 8,000 feet.
To perform MTS helium reconfiguration.
Roger that.
And do you have your horizontal fit configuration complete yet?
That's affirmed.
Pilot Ken Cameron in the process of performing the main propulsion system helium reconfiguration.
What?
Yeah, Ohm's RCS cross-feed configuration is complete for the clock.
Copy that. QCS up 941.
Right, copy.
This procedure opens the helium isolation valves necessary for the in-flight purges of the engines.
STS, step 953.
OTC PLT.
Go ahead.
Roger, Ohm's interconnect came up enabled, and the MPS helium ISOs and the pneumatic helium ISOs were open.
Copy that.
SRO NTD, verify 70-minute Gen still has normal track.
I can verify that.
And DLT OTC, report RCS quantities, forward, left, and right, fuel, and oxidizer.
Roger, stand by. Okay, forward oxidizer 68, forward fuel 68, left oxidizer 100, left fuel 9 or 8, right oxidizer 100, right fuel 99, 9 or 9er.
Copy that.
STM NTD. Deactivate pad OIS. Copy that.
Pilot Ken Cameron having reported now the quantities of storable propellant on board, those figures being confirmed.
Safety council NTD.
Safety, go ahead.
Did you verify the close air crew is back at roadblock AB11?
I already did that. I already gave you that step.
Copy. SRO NTD. SRO NTD 212.
NTD SRO 212, go ahead.
KSC area is clear for launch. Step 957.
Thank you, sir.
OTC, FCP. That's CFCP. Step 959. All ready for fuel cell load adjust. Copy that. EPDD copy. EPD copies. Kick you off at 961. And DCLD copy 961.
DCL copies.
NASA Test Director Mike Leinbach confirming now that all personnel have been cleared from the launch danger area at this time.
The 10 time clock will hold at T-minus 9 minutes.
Here's OTC on net 212. All personnel discontinue all non-mandatory LTV traffic for remainder of count. 976, AMQC.
Copy.
OTC CVFS. Right, CVFS. T-minus 20-minute GPC dump is complete per step 968. Copy that, thank you.
Now 2 minutes away from going into the 10-minute hold at T-minus 9. Shuttle weather officer is briefing Launch Director Bob Seek. There are some showers, rain showers within 20 miles of KSC. Melbourne now reporting their clouds have gone scattered. And the clouds at the shuttle landing facility now reported to be at 7,500 feet, so that would be below our margins.
Go for ceiling and blast.
Copy, launch director NTD, copy. Launch Director NTD 212.
CMQC 993 will be not performed.
Copy.
1 minute away now from going into the 9-minute built-in hold.
PPD, OTC.
This is CPVD.
Can you give me step 1005 yet?
That'll be a not perform.
No.
And payload bay purge, flow radius set for launch.
Okay, copy
For 1005.
Thank you. 1005, CMQC.
I copy.
This is shuttle launch control. We're now at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. We're assessing the weather conditions at this time. However, based on the information that we have now, we probably would not be picking up at the time it would be appropriate to come out of this built-in hold after 10 minutes. Otherwise, though, as far as the Space Shuttle Atlantis and the Gamma Ray Observatory, we're ready to fly. We're just simply waiting for improvement in cloud conditions.
Correction is not required at this time. Let me verify that T9.
At T-minus 9 minutes and holding, this is shuttle launch control.
NTD, CVFS.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I didn't hear what the response was on the launch calling.
He's still checking.
Okay, thank you.
NTD, Houston Flight 212.
Go ahead, flight.
Launch poly update will not be required today. And NTD, we are still looking at the weather situation and should have a recommendation for you in a few minutes whether it will be go to come out of the T-minus 9-minute hold. Currently, we are not go for the weather.
I copy.
NTD CMQC.
Go ahead, QC.
At this time, all constraints to step 1028 have been cleared.
Copy, thank you. Launch Director NTD 212.
Go ahead.
SRO reports he is no-go right now for ceiling and blast.
Copy. And as has already been reported by flight, they're looking still at the RTLS conditions, so we probably are going to be holding here for at least a little while at T-minus 9. You can factor that into your plans.
Copy. GLS NTD.
Yeah, let's go.
Cancel pending, please.
Copy that, some work.
And all personnel will hold be extended.
Did you see this, HCD? Go ahead.
Yes, sir. We would like to request a 10-minute heads up before performing step 998 or HCDS and backup AutoCal.
Okay, copy that.
STM NTD 212.
STM.
Has OIS been deactivated at the pad now?
That's permanent.
Copy.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. We have 4.5 minutes remaining in this built-in hold. Brewster Shaw has completed his poll of the mission management team, and all of those mission managers report that they are ready to fly. KSC does have a request at this time to extend the built-in hold to allow for an increase or increase in the ceilings, which right now are at 8,000 or below, and we do require above 8,000 feet for a launch this morning. Otherwise, no significant problems in work, and simply awaiting an improvement in cloud cover. At T-minus 9 minutes and holding, this is shuttle launch control.
All personnel of the NTD on 212 conducting a launch status check at T-minus 9 minutes. Verify ready to resume the count and go for launch. Say go or no go. OTC.
OTC is go.
PTC. TBC go. PTC.
Go.
LTS.
LTS go.
Flight.
Flight is go, with some words when you get done with the rest of your poll, NTD.
Copy. Mila. STM.
STM's go.
Safety console.
Safety consoles go.
SPE.
SPE go.
CDR.
Go.
LRD. LRD go. SRO.
SRO is no-go at this time.
And no go based on what?
Based on weather and blast.
And the weather is ceilings?
That's affirmative. Ceilings less than 8,000 feet.
I copy. And flight, your words?
Flight on 212, we have cleared the RTLS weather. We're recommending go. Current observations are 7,500 thin broken from the ground. The weather aircraft has cleared us to see the approach. Therefore, we have cleared our last hurdle to be go for launch. We would like to update the crew. We would like to change the RTLS runway from 15 to 33, and with your go, we would like to do that.
I copy. Proceed.
Atlantis, Houston. RTLS. Go ahead.
Roger, Steve. I guess you heard that on the air to ground. We'd like to change the RTLS runway to 33. The problem is basically that we're ending up a little low energy when we go to 15, touching down between 700 and 800 feet in the STA. Predicted touchdown distance and what Dan was seeing on 33 is around 1,900 to 2,000 feet. So we're going to go ahead and ask you to switch over to KSC 33 for the RTLS runway.
Okay, copy that. Do you want close aim point on 33?
Negative. Nominal aim point on 33 and a reminder for MLS Channel 6.
Okay, MLS Channel 6 and KSC 33 nominal aim point.
That's affirmative.
And CNSC OTC.
I copy. Will be performing 994. PLT panel 08.
PLT OTC. Oh, this is CDR. Go ahead. Okay, CNSC, go ahead.
Panel 08, MLS 1, 2, and 3 from Wales to 6.
Roger, that's in work. NTD Launch Director 212.
Go ahead, Launch Director.
Okay, the HAS gas hit up that they needed to get started 10 minutes before coming out of the hold line.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 9 minutes and holding. We are awaiting a recommendation to proceed with the countdown based on an assessment that if we change our return to launch site runway from 15 to 33, that clouds would be acceptable. That's being discussed at this time.
And while we're still holding on that, I'll go and perform my polls this time. come back to weather. Ops manager, launch director on 212.
Stand by 15.
Copy.
NTD SRO 212.
Go ahead, SRO.
Yes, sir. Be advised that our RSO has waived the sealing requirement, but he is still evaluating the blast data. It'll take him about another 5 minutes.
I copy, and launch director, you copy?
Wait, copy.
And launch director, ops manager.
Go ahead, sir.
Roger. We have no constraints, and you are cleared to proceed with the launch.
Wait, copy.
We maintain quiet in the firing room, please.
And Cape Weather, launch director, 212.
Launch director is Cape Weather and OS 212, over.
Okay, go ahead with your final forecast and winds.
Roger, sir. We have no weather launch constraints violated. Steady state wind forecast for launch from 110 degrees at 12 knots, over.
I copy. And NTD launch director, what's your posture for coming out of the hold once we hear from range?
We need to hear back from HGD and activate recorders, which we can do on the fly, and then we'll be ready.
Okay, copy. NTD launch director.
NTD.
As soon as you're ready, we'll go pick up the clock and go on down to 5 minutes to wait on the final confirmation for SRO, which we may get on the fly. So whenever your team is ready, we can proceed.
I copy.
With of course the fact that we're going to hold at 5 until we hear from range.
Understood. HGD, NTD, 212.
This is HGD.
Do you copy that? We're going to pick up the clock and march on down to 5, and if you're not ready, we'll hold there. Copy that.
I copy.
Flight, CISL, JRPS, NTD on 212.
Flights on 212.
CISL,
JRPS.
activate recorders, please.
Copy that. We need CMQC on 145, please.
Same QC, did you copy?
CMQC copies.
GLS, NTD.
Yeah, let's go.
Pick up the clock on your count, please.
Copy that. And the clock will resume on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
T-minus 9 minutes and holding.
ELT, OTC.
GLS auto sequence has been initiated.
ELT, go ahead.
Configure fuel cell central bus source switches.
Roger, essential bus source to fuel cell. That's complete.
This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 8 minutes 25 seconds and counting. The plan at this point is go down to T-minus 5 and hold and wait directions from the superintendent of range operations that we can proceed. We'll go now to mission control in Houston for a readiness statement there.
Flight, proceed with transmission of stored program command.
Flight Wilco.
This is Mission Control Houston. As the countdown progresses towards launch this morning, the flight crew, the shuttle vehicle and the flight control team here in Houston have been declared ready to fly by Ascent Flight Director Wayne Hale. Weather at the primary transoceanic abort landing site, Ben Guerir, Morocco, has been declared go. Weather pilot Charlie Bolden, flying the range at that TAL site, described the weather as great this morning.
Yeah, let's go.
Launch conditions are presenting no concerns for flight controllers here, as there are no showers or weather activities of any concern in the launch corridor. There was a decision made here in Houston to redesignate the RTLS runway from 15 to 33 for enhanced winds and visibility. At this point, we're continuing to count down to a potential 5-minute hold. All positions here in the flight control room are ready to press on with the count for a liftoff this morning.
Go ahead, Bob.
Well, okay, Steve, looks like the weather's going to cooperate, so we'll see if you can't get us started off this year. Have a good one.
So, many thanks from us to you and the entire team, Bob. We appreciate it very much, and we'll have a good flight.
Yes, sir.
CHCD OTC.
This is HCD.
You have your auto count complete yet?
Auto count's complete. All I need to do is get the test gas confidence checks.
Copy that.
And we're awaiting final word that we will continue with the countdown at T-5.
And HCD, do you expect that to be complete in the next minute?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you.
GSRP OTC, start APU and hydraulic strip chart recorders.
Copy. Recorders are up.
CLT OTC, perform APU pre-start.
Roger that.
Direction now to the commander to begin APU pre-start.
Two gray talkbacks, number 2's Barbara Hole.
Coming up on T-minus 5 minutes and 30 seconds.
We expected that on number 2.
Understood. HCD, NTD, how you doing?
We're complete with our test gas confidence checks, and we're looking good.
All right, you go to continue the count at 5 minutes. That's firm.
Okay, let's copy.
Appears we will be continuing the count past T-minus 5.
Okay, let's go.
T-minus 4 minutes, 56 seconds and counting. Pilot Ken Cameron reporting that APU pre-start is complete.
CDR OTC, reconfigure heaters.
CDR, roger.
The solid rocket booster and external tank safe and arm devices have now been armed.
That is complete. OTC CDR heater reconfig complete.
APUs are now running.
Okay, let's go for bird sequence 4.
Standing by to transfer to internal power. Gimbal check going on now of the 3 main engines of Atlantis. Final check of the orbiter steering.
Contact.
All systems go for launch. Main engines now in the start position.
NTD, CM212.
Okay, let's go for ET LO2 pressurization.
Standing by now to retract the gaseous oxygen vent hood. And the beanie cap now being retracted, and the swing arm will move away from the external tank. In a moment, the crew will be instructed to close their visors.
Memory's cleared, no unexpected errors.
Copy that. OTC to flight crew. Close and lock your visors, initiate O2 flow, and enjoy the ride.
CDR, Roger, and thanks a million. Okay, let's go for ET LH2 pressurization.
T-minus 90 seconds and counting. At T-minus 1 minute, the ground launch sequencer will verify that the Space Shuttle main engines are ready to start. Liquid hydrogen tank now at flight pressure. T-minus 1 minute. Ground launch sequencer verifying main engines are ready. Residual hydrogen burn igniters are armed. T-minus 45 seconds. Sound suppression water system armed. That will release water at T-minus 16 seconds at the rate of 900,000 gallons a minute. T-minus 31 seconds. We have the handoff to Atlantis' onboard computers. Atlantis now controlling.
25. 20.
T-minus 16 seconds. Sound suppression water system operating. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Main engine start. 3 good engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis and the Gamma Ray Observatory, seeking out the explosive forces of the universe.
Full program, Houston.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Houston now controlling. Roll maneuver complete. Placing Atlantis and crew in the heads down attitude and on course for its 28.5-degree inclination orbit. Engine throttling down now to help maintain optimum aerodynamic conditions as Atlantis accelerates through the dense lower atmosphere. Engines throttling further down now to 67%. Velocity 860 feet per second, all systems performing well. Atlantis now beginning to emerge from the region of maximum dynamic pressure. Engines are throttling up.
Atlantis, Houston, go at throttle up.
Go at throttle up.
Atlantis' 3 main engines burning at 104% rated thrust. Velocity 2,200 feet per second, altitude 67,000 feet, downrange distance 8 nautical miles. All systems performing well. The next milestone in this climb to orbit will be solid rocket booster burnout and staging. That coming up in just about 15 seconds. We have confirmation of a clean separation on time. Guidance has converged. Velocity now 4,200 feet per second. Altitude 190,000 feet. Downrange distance 36 nautical miles.
Atlantis Houston, performance is nominal.
Roger, nominal.
That call an indication that performance of the shuttle main engines and boosters in the first stage of flight was good. Three main engines continuing to burn well. Hydraulic and electrical systems performing well. Altitude now 246,000 feet.
Houston, two-engine Ben Guerir.
Two-engine Ben Guerir.
Atlantis could now make a transoceanic abort landing at Ben Guerir on only two engines, should that become necessary. Altitude 271,000 feet. Velocity 5,300 feet per second. Downrange distance 72 nautical miles. Time 3 minutes 30 seconds. All systems performing very well. We're just about 30 seconds away from reaching the point of no return. The point at which return to the launch site abort would not be an option. Altitude now 314,000 feet. Velocity 6,200 feet per second. Downrange 102 nautical miles.
Atlantis Houston, negative return.
Negative return.
That call a confirmation that the only abort options at this point would be an abort to orbit or a transoceanic abort landing at Ben Guerir. Should either become necessary, all systems continuing to perform well. Good hydraulics, good electrical system. Engines holding in at 104% rated thrust. Altitude now 354,000 feet. Velocity 7,900 feet per second. Downrange distance 160 nautical miles.
Atlantis Houston, press to ATO, select Banjul.
Press to ATO, select Banjul.
Atlantis can now reach a safe orbit with only two engines, should that become necessary. Time 5 minutes. All systems performing well. Altitude 370,000 feet. Velocity 9,300 feet per second. Downrange 204 nautical miles.
Atlantis, Droop Banjul 109.
Droop Banjul 109.
Atlantis Houston, press to MECO.
Press to MECO.
That call an indication that Atlantis has now gained enough upward momentum to reach a normal engine cutoff target, even should one engine fail. All systems continuing to perform well. Ascent going very smoothly. Time 6 minutes 3 seconds. Altitude 372,000 feet. Velocity 12,000 feet per second.
Single engine Banjul 104.
Single engine Banjul 104.
Atlantis could now make a transoceanic abort landing at Banjul, the Gambia, on only one engine, should that become necessary. Hydraulic and electrical systems performing well. 3 good engines. Downrange distance now 360 nautical miles. Altitude 370,000 feet.
Atlantis Houston, single engine press 104.
Single engine press 104.
That calls an indication that Atlantis could stand to lose 2 engines at this point and still reach main engine cutoff targets on one engine burning at 104%. All 3 engines continuing to perform very solidly at 104%. Hydraulic and electrical systems doing very well. Altitude now 354,000 feet. Downrange distance increasing now 499 nautical miles. Relative velocity 18,000 feet per second. Time 7 minutes 38 seconds. Just about 25 seconds away from main engine cutoff. We've got 3G throttling. Engine's beginning to throttle back now. Throttle settings at 95% in order to maintain G-force structural limitations. Atlantis now traveling at 23,000 feet per second, altitude 352,000 feet, downrange distance 645 nautical miles. Main engine cutoff time will be 8 minutes 33 seconds. Time now 8 minutes 20 seconds.
Good Miko, Houston.
Roger that, Atlantis. DTO.
Go for the DTO, and we had a fail-off jet on right manifold 1.
Roger that, Atlantis. We see it. No action for you. It's R1U.
R1U.
This is Mission Control Houston. We've had confirmation of an external tank separation on time. Crew given a go for the photographic DTO, which will involve mission specialist Linda Godwin, located on the middeck, making her way up into the flight deck. As the vehicle is pitched over to provide good photographic angles, Godwin will photograph the external tank as it drifts away and very slowly tumbles back into the atmosphere. In addition, we got a indication that reaction control system jet R1U failed off. There's no action for the crew at this point. There are no requirements for an OHMS 1 burn. The direct insertion has provided insertion to the desired apogee target for Atlantis. Crew should be getting underway very shortly with their main propulsion system propellant dump sequence. That sequence will involve purging, dumping propellant from the main propulsion systems and repositioning the main engines. Following that activity, the crew will be shutting down auxiliary power units and hydraulic systems, as they'll no longer be required for the remainder of the insertion and post-insertion activities. Flight controllers here in Houston surveying all orbiter systems find the vehicle to be very clean. There will be no modifications or changes to nominal OHMS 2 burn setup. Booster officer here in the flight control room is watching the main propellant system dump, noting that things are going very smoothly. Flight Director Wayne Hale pulling the room here, looking for a go from all positions for continuation towards the OHMS 2 burn, which will serve to circularize the orbit of Atlantis. Current orbital parameters are 236 by 32 nautical miles. The OMS 2 burn will circularize the orbit at 243 nautical miles for nominal orbit operations.
Atlantis, Houston, we'd like you to hold off on APU shutdown here for a moment. We're looking at a problem with water spray boiler number 2. Ken, we'd like you to switch to the B controller on water spray boiler 2.
Roger that.
Mechanical systems officer is here in the flight control room watching a trend with water spray boiler number 2 primary controller. Before the crew shuts down the auxiliary power unit number 2, the ground has suggested that the crew switch over to controller B so that flight controllers can get a look at how that controller is operating that water spray boiler. The boilers are used to cool the hydraulic systems and lube oil that keeps the auxiliary power units lubricated and the hydraulic fluid that provides mechanical pressure or hydraulic pressure to the mechanical systems on board the vehicle.
Atlantis, Houston, can you have a go for APU shutdown? What we thought we saw there was some ice in water spray boiler number 2. It looks like it's cleared out now, and water spray boiler ought to be good on both the A and the B controller. Go for APU shutdown.
Okay, it looked a little high to me and came down nicely. You want me to stay in B on number 2?
Atlantis, Houston, Ken, you can go ahead and go back to the A controller on boiler number 2.
That's complete, Steve, and the APUs are coming down.
Roger that.
The condition on a water spray boiler number 2 appears to have been nothing more than a nuisance as a little ice built up in that water spray boiler. The cycling of the controllers from A to B has cleared the problem up. There is no mechanical problem to pursue. Water spray boilers are in good shape. That paves the way for the crew to shut down the auxiliary power units and hydraulic systems, including those water spray boilers assigned to each of the hydraulic systems. Very shortly thereafter, they'll be activating the flash evaporator system and its associated heaters. Following those activities, onboard software will be moded to Ops 105 to provide for the OMS 2 burn target setup, and the OMS 2 burn to circularize Atlantis' orbit at 243 nautical miles. This is Mission Control Houston. Mechanical Systems Officer confirms a clean shutdown of the auxiliary power units.
Atlantis, Houston, Steve, you have a go for nominal OMS 2. Nominal targets are all good.
Thank you, Steve. It should work.
Atlantis Houston with some switch throws for you on 812.
Stand by one, Steve, we'll get somebody there.
Atlantis Houston, disregard the call for the switches on 812.
Okay, thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston. Environmental Control Officer reports that the crew is pressing on in their ascent checklist, configuring the vehicle for orbit operations, as well as for the upcoming OMS 2 burn to circularize their orbit at 243 nautical miles. Flash evaporator system and associated heaters are in the process of being activated on board. That flash evaporator system will provide cooling to orbiter systems until the payload bay doors can be opened and provide radiation cooling for the orbital phase of flight. So far, with the exception of a single reaction control system thruster R1U, which failed off late in the late in the ascent, which is being investigated. All systems aboard Atlantis appear to be performing exceptionally well. This is Mission Control Houston. Propulsion officer and her support team have worked to identify the precise nature of the failure of RCS Jet R1U, and the signature appears to look very much like the two jet failures that occurred on STS 36. Potential causes some sort of blockage in the line by due to contaminants or bubbles. If an additional jet were to fail, a hot fire is expected to be an alternative course of action to clear those lines out. That was a protocol that was exercised on STS-36 that proved very successful. At this point, that jet failure is not considered to be an issue of concern here in the flight control room, as the crew and flight controllers press on through the ascent checklist, preparing the vehicle for the OMS 2 burn and ensuing orbit operations. At this point, the crew is beginning to conduct the MPS vacuum inerting process, which is simply a matter of allowing the vacuum of the environment around the vehicle to draw any residual propellant out of the main propulsion system.
Houston, Atlantis, we're going to maneuver to the Ohms 2 burn attitude.
Roger that, Atlantis. You have a go for the maneuver, and the Ohms 2 solution looks good.
Very good.
We're now 18 minutes away from the ignition of twin orbital maneuvering system engines on Atlantis to boost the perigee of the orbit and refine the operational orbit in a circular at a circular altitude of 243 nautical miles. Live telemetry from the vehicle indicating that Atlantis is maneuvering to the Ohms 2 burn attitude. And we have confirmation from the mechanical systems officer here in the control room that the external tank umbilical door closure has been accomplished and that those doors closed nominally. There are expected...
Houston, we see that the ET doors are closed and latched, and you're on the way to attitude. If you've got time, we'd like a debris report, and we also have some words for you on R1U if you're ready.
Okay. We show the doors closed and latched also. We saw some small debris come by above a velocity of about 10K, 10 to 12, 13K in there. And other than that, nothing to report. We'll look it over more closely and give you a more detailed report.
Roger that, Steve. And the prop folks have determined that R1U is a real fail-off, similar to the problems on STS 36. No action for you. Should we get a subsequent jet failure, we may ask you to do a hot fire, but nothing for now.
Okay, copy. Thank you, Steve.
Again, the loss of that jet not considered to be an impact or propose any sort of complications for on-orbit operations. That's one of several jets that fire in the same direction, and loss of one will not decrease any maneuvering capability in orbit. Flight controllers who were watching the closure of the ET umbilical doors noted that the drive rates and duration of close time were right on the money. They met the designed rates and closure times without any incident. We're now 15 minutes away from Ohms 2 burn. All systems performing well, all activities in this latter part of the ascent checklist progressing very smoothly.
Atlantis, Houston, reference those thermal APU messages.
Go ahead, Houston.
Roger that. We got switches for you on A12.
Okay, we're ready for A12 switches.
Roger, can a APU heater, tank, fuel line, water system, 1B, 2B, and 3B, 3 switches to auto?
One B, 2B, 3B heater, tank, fuel line switches going to auto. And that's complete.
Roger that. Thanks, Atlantis.
like our configuration for the burn?
Roger that, Atlantis. We concur your configuration is good for the burn, and we'll be with you for the first portion of the burn. We are going to lose you at about 44 plus 40. We'll pick you up on the other side at 50 minutes even.
Okay, thank you.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're now 1 minute 20 seconds away from the firing of Atlantis's 2 orbital maneuvering system engines to circularize the orbit of the vehicle and crew at 243 nautical miles for orbit operations on this flight. Crew has completed preparations of the vehicle for the burn, and flight controllers on the ground watching live telemetry from the vehicle concur that all systems are properly configured and in place.
Okay, we copy.
Now 30 seconds away from ignition of the orbital maneuvering system engines. Engine pressurization looks good. We're about 3 minutes and 20 seconds away from losing signal through the tracking and data relay satellite east. We'll have the opportunity to watch the burn get underway here before we lose signal with the vehicle. Guidance, propulsion, and GN&C officers here in the flight control room report that the burn is underway and all parameters are very good. Burn began on time, and all systems performing well.
Atlantis, Houston, we're about a minute and a half from LOS. The burn looks great so far. We'll see you on the other side at 50 plus 00.
Okay, we'll see you there.
This is Mission Control Houston. Just 45 minutes into the flight of Atlantis on STS-37. We have passed out of range of contact with the vehicle as Atlantis moves beyond the range of the tracking and data relay satellite system. We'll be out of contact with Atlantis for just about 5 minutes as we lost signal. The orbital maneuvering system burn to circularize Atlantis' orbit was going very smoothly. At last look, the burn had affected so far a perigee or low end of the orbit all the way up to 223 nautical miles and climbing. Again, the circular target is 243 nautical miles for nominal orbit operations. All in all, a very clean and uneventful launch and ascent to orbit. Completion of the circularization following insertion to orbit going very well also. The only failure or condition of note was the reaction control system jet R1U, which failed off. But the signature of that failure looks very much like jet failures on previous flights. Those jets were recovered by the conduct of a RCS hot fire, just a short blast of the jets to clear those lines. At this point, that's not even being considered a course of action, as R1U is one of several jets that fire in that direction and is not considered to threaten any of the orbital maneuvering capability required for this flight. Should an additional failure occur for some reason, a hot fire might be considered at that time, but right now that failure represents no impact or concern. Again, we'll acquire signal again in about 3 minutes, 20 seconds and determine the status and end results of the OMS 2 burn. Just about the same time, considering a good OMS 2 burn, crew and flight controllers will be moving into the post-insertion phase of flight, which will involve reconfiguration of the data processing systems on board Atlantis, as well as opening the payload bay doors and then getting out of their launch and entry suits and into the more comfortable short-sleeve shirt uniforms that are worn during the orbit operations phase. Again, all systems performing well and all events progressing very smoothly in the early stages of this shuttle mission. We're just about 47.5 minutes into the flight, and we'll be acquiring signal in 2.5 minutes with the crew aboard Atlantis. This is Mission Control. This is Mission Control Houston. We've reacquired signal with the vehicle. All flight controllers report that the vehicle looks to be in a good configuration, and there are no residuals from the OMS 2 burn, which has been completed apparently on time with the desired effects. We're now in a 243 circular orbit. We're standing by for voice contact now with the crew.
Atlantis Houston, we're with you through Teeters West.
Roger.
Atlantis, we saw a good burn. Your post-burn configuration looks good, and you have a go for nominal post-insertion ops and single G2 ops.
Okay, we're getting into that, and we owe you a gimbal check. Are you ready?
That's affirmative. We're ready to watch the gimbal.
Okay, here it comes.
This is Mission Control Houston. We're now 57.5 minutes into the flight of Atlantis on STS 37. Everything progressing very smoothly. Flight controllers and crew are working through the post-insertion activities following a nominal ohms 2 burn, which has served to successfully circularize the orbit of Atlantis and crew at 243 nautical miles, which was the design target for nominal orbit operations for this mission. A uneventful and flawless powered flight phase during the ascent was punctuated after main engine cutoff by failure of a single reaction control system thruster. That thruster is one of several that fire in that direction and does not constitute any sort of impact on the flight, does not constitute or pose any threat to maneuverability on orbit. In fact, that thruster problem looks very much like one encountered on previous missions, and there are actions that could be taken to restore that jet if it were necessary, but at this point it simply is not necessary for the flight, and flight controllers and crew are pressing on with the timeline. Following the orbital maneuvering system engines firings, which placed Atlantis and crew in their operating orbit, the crew is given a go for nominal post-insertion operations, which initially consist of reconfiguring the onboard data processing systems, that is, assigning major functions to each of the general purpose computers, and preparing for opening of the payload bay doors. We're at just about 1 hour mission elapsed time, and payload bay door operations are scheduled to begin in just about 25 minutes. Data processing systems officer here reports that the general purpose computer transition to Ops 2, that's the domain of software that provides for all of the on-orbit operations, is now in progress and looking good. This is Mission Control Houston. The transition of the onboard data processing systems with the new general purpose computer assignments and transitions to the software domain Ops2 for on-orbit operations progressing smoothly. We now have GPC number 1 performing guidance, navigation, and control functions for on-orbit operations, as is the standard. An additional general purpose computer will be loaded with the same software and same functions, but held in the standby mode as a redundant backup to the primary general purpose computer, providing the guidance, navigation, and control instructions for the vehicle. In addition to that, a deorbit guidance, navigation, and control function will be assigned to an additional GPC and held in standby at the ready should that become necessary on short notice also. An additional general purpose computer will be providing systems maintenance and systems management, that is, and payload support functions, and will be running in tandem with the primary guidance, navigation, and control GPC. The fifth and final general purpose computer will remain loaded with the backup flight system and also held in standby throughout the orbital phase. This is Mission Control Houston. In just about 3 minutes, we'll be taking from the Kennedy Space Center a live press conference to discuss the launch countdown and ascent events. That will interrupt live coverage of the shuttle mission shortly before we pick up coverage again here at the Johnson Space Center following the briefing.
Go ahead, Atlantis.
Just got a spec 66 water with a waist pressure low, 10 with a down arrow.
Roger that. Stand by just a second. We'll look at him. Atlantis Houston, on your wastewater tank message, there's no action for you on that. We think it's associated with tank A pressurization, and we'll continue to watch it.
Roger, thank you.
This is Mission Control, Houston. We have indications on the ground that the crew is maneuvering Atlantis to the payload bay door opening attitude. Flight controllers polled here in Mission Control have given their consent, and crew will shortly be given a go to open the payload bay doors.
Welcome to this morning's post-launch news conference. With us to tell us how the STS-37 countdown went is KSC Launch Director Bob Seek. Bob, it's your show.
Well, it was a smooth flow followed by a smooth launch count, which is the kind that the team likes to put on. We were within 10 minutes of our timeline all night long when we started tanking, and we had no problems to contend with on any of the flight or ground systems. A couple of ground support equipment measurements acted up, but that will happen whether we're launching or doing our daily maintenance at the launch pad. So no factors that impacted the timeline. The only thing we had to contend with was the weather, as predicted. We had some showers in the area and some cloud decks, which affected our launch rules for the weather. We had excellent support from the Air Force and the range with all the weather forecasts, the weather calls, and the range safety personnel. So even with the weather conditions, we only had to delay the liftoff less than 5 minutes, and we're of course able to finish off the count with a smooth terminal count, no drama. We had a safe and successful launch, and we're looking forward to this mission and the next one, which we hope is only a few weeks away.
We can take questions at this time. Please wait for the mic and give your name and affiliation. Jim?
Jim Banky, Florida today. Bob, we heard something about a waiver for clouds, and could you talk about that and what the range concern was as you talked about holding at T-5, and then suddenly it cleared up and you counted down to 0?
Well, the cloud waiver was similar to the condition we had last time. There was a ceiling between 7,000 and 8,000 feet, and the range did their helicopter operation as last time. We're able to get good visibility of the vehicle through the 8,000 feet. And in fact, by the time we got into the launch conditions, we were technically within limits again with the 8,000-foot ceiling. But they exercised the option to mitigate the cloud cover below us, so we were able to, of course, to pick up the count. And the other item was the blast propagation, which is a range and a shuttle launch commit criteria, and that, of course, is the effects should we have a detonation at the pad, the probability of injuries in the local community, and that requirement is if it's less than 1 in a million, of course, we're go. If it's over 1 in 100,000, has to hold and evaluate, and that's based on the weather conditions that the second set of data that they took and ran through the computer models said that we were within limits on blast, and that's why we were able to proceed.
Beth?
Beth Dickey with Reuters. Bob, would you talk a little bit about how you felt about 24 minutes into the flight when those doors snapped shut and latched? Were you relieved? What did you feel?
Well, we felt good about it. We watched the ascent of the mission all the way through the OMS burn, which in this case the orbiter maneuvering engine system was not required. And once that particular event, closing the doors, is like the separation of the ET engine cut off and back up. It's an event that you like to have behind you, but we were confident that that was going to work.
Sharish?
Sharish Date with your Orlando Sentinel. Bob, could you explain a little bit about the changing the runway directions on the RTLS abort possibilities? And also, if you could, I'm a little unclear, I guess, on the blast propagation, what exactly had to be done in order to not hold at 5 minutes?
Well, in the blast, we ought to get the range people to address that. That's a more detailed explanation of how the computer program works. And probability and statistics, but it's a long-standing requirement for any launch from the range. And the runway selection was based on the cloud cover.
Harry?
Harry Colcom, Aviation Week. Mr. Seek, to go into orbit, were there any burns, any OMS ignitions?
Well, the first option was not required. Later on in the ascent, there is to get to the orbit that there's.
2 was used.
Well, I think that we ought to address that to Johnson when you have the flight director briefing.
Phil, did you have one?
Yeah. Phil Chen for Compute. Bob, this is your first flow with the new advanced general purpose computers. Wondering how well they worked out. Did they work out any better than your experiences with the old general purpose computers?
The new computers, we couldn't tell the difference. They, in terms of ground reliability, probably about the same, maybe a little bit better. And of course, in our procedures and software, we didn't have to alter anything with the new computer, so it was essentially transparent once we put the new boxes in.
Jim.
Jim Slade, ABC. Bob, do you expect them to try to clear the line on the RCS thruster problem? Do you need a burp?
Oh, well, you ought to again address that to flight directors. That's their call during the mission.
How soon were you aware of that before the events started?
Well, that wasn't noticed till they were going uphill.
Dan.
Yeah, Bob. Dan Billow, WESH-TV. There's been a lot of talk about delays, some criticism about the conservatism with which NASA approaches launching. But when things go like they do today, does that give you? Does that back you up? Tell you you're doing the right thing?
Well, we're doing the right thing when we make sure that we have a safe vehicle before we commit it to flight. The challenge for us